Hola, everyone. Welcome to Latinas from the Block to the Boardroom. This is your host, Teresa Gonzalez, and founder of LatinasB2B.com and LatinasB2B.marketing. I want to introduce our special guest today, Elaine Montilla. She is an assistant vice president and CIO for information technology at the Graduate Center, CUNY. She's also a Forbes Technology Council member and writer, but most of all, she's a TEDx speaker and an AMA Women's Leadership Center presenter. I'm so happy to have her today on this podcast. We're going to talk so many things on mentorship, women in tech, diversity, and what it means to have inclusion for women of color in the technology sector, especially in high tech. So welcome, Elaine, to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you as my guest. I was searching for women like you and me who are Latinas in tech and how we came to be in that realm. But not only that, but how do we get into these realms? Because I didn't see very many Latinas like myself. And so when I found you, I believe it was through your TED Talk. And I also found you through some articles just in LinkedIn. And I know you have a website called 5xminority.com, which you do a lot of content writing about how we're or just lack of representation of Latinas in tech.
Correct.
And you and I have that same heartfelt of we need more representation in that realm. It's heavily male dominated. It's so hard to navigate the space. And a lot of us are leaving that realm because we're just tired. It's exhausting. It's just exhausting as a person of color in general, as we hear and as we know today. So I just want to thank you for being a part of this podcast and coming on the show, because right now I think Latinas and just women of color in general are trying to hear more of the voice of, I'm going to do this. I want to get in there. I want to be in STEM. I want to take my own, intellectual property and make it my own. And I want to start my own business. I think that's where a lot of people are, because if we wait, what is it? The gender parity for us is like 174 years.
Yes, you're right. And first, thank you, Teresa, for having me here today.
Sorry for the long intro.
No problem. I'm delighted to speak with you and to hear such a beautiful intro. And you are right. It's the last time I checked, it's actually 40% of women in tech leave just after 10 years. And one
Incredible.
of the reasons that they leave is because of the lack of support and mentorship. And so, because, like you said, I didn't have many role models growing up, I decided on my own that I was going to be one for other Latinas who were coming behind me and needed to know, okay, what do I do? What's the trick? What's the trick? What is happening?
Right.
And so that's how 5X Minority started. It was a way of me just writing about my experience and asking myself, what can I share so that other women can read this and find a way to make it to the top?
Right. And as an assistant editor to Forbes, correct? For the technology, is that correct?
Well, I'm one of the contributors for the Technology Forum, and I write articles for them that I then translate into my website also. And that's another reason why I wanted to work with Forbes, because of their audience. And I wanted to make sure that I could reach a greater audience, and I like writing for other companies. So as long as I'm talking and being annoying, I'm going to be there.
Yes.
You're going to see me.
I love it. I love it. It's like putting the fist in the air through the airwaves on the internet. And that's what I want to keep doing. And I'm going to find more women to do it. There's a few men out there as well who have just said, men of color, that are just like, forget it. I'm done. I'm going to do this. And it's all come about recently from something that I experienced, and I want to call it ageism. But a lot of younger folks, and this is also my pivot moment, is that we were being hired as contractors in tech. We weren't getting hired full time. And I will keep saying this on all the podcasts, because for whatever reasons, we don't look like them. Mm-hmm. We don't talk like them. We're not in the mold that they want us to fit into on the team, but they want our skills. And then we're disposable. So I see that as a way of disrespect to a lot of people of color, because we work so hard to get in there and we're so excited. And we've even left other jobs just to take a contract position, hoping to get in there. And I'm not promoting this podcast to say that's how you get in. There are different ways. And this is where I want you to share your story and how we can go through those channels to really get up to that C-suite. It takes a long time if you're really passionate about a company.
It takes a while. And I'm glad you mentioned ageism, because I see it happening at other places. And let me tell you, thinking back on my last maybe 3 hires in IT, the senior media services technician that I last hired was over 50. The manager for the operations area in IT the last one I hired is over 50. And I think that's one of the problems that we have, that we're not focusing on the actual expertise that a person brings. And that unconscious bias is part of the problem that gets in the way. And that's why I have a ton of recommendations for your audience today. You let me know when you want me to get started.
Oh, please. No, please. It's hard to come into that spectrum. I mean, we're not HR people, and the HR people, I don't know, they're just another breed. But
yes,
that's
another podcast.
Yeah, that's another podcast. And they mean well, but it's not their ultimate decision. It's the hiring team, right? Because they put the recs out for them. And, as I've talked about this, it's above their pay grade, right? It comes down from the top of who they hire and the numbers, because people know what to do. They just don't do it.
Yes. And I think it's the same. It's the same in education. What you just mentioned with HR. It is not the HR people, and it is not the university. It is the system. The system was built in a way where it's so difficult to deviate from the norm. And if you try, you're going to encounter so many roadblocks and issues, because you're only one person fighting an entire system where maybe 90% of the rest of the community is following that system. So imagine if you're part of that 10% trying to move things forward. It is exhausting, like you said earlier. And I don't blame them 100%, because they are following rules. I mean, I've mentioned many times that we should remove the names from the job descriptions, but sometimes that's not something that HR was asked to do. So you have to find ways to do it yourself.
Wow. We have to remove our names. I saw an article in LinkedIn that a man wrote, actually a very long time ago. He got so much shit for saying that women should just remove their names or put their first initial and their last name so that we could get hired more.
I totally understand why, but I don't think we should do it. I think the hiring manager should remove the names and create what I call blind auditions, just like The Voice, right? When I get resumes, because
like The Voice, is
like
that
The
what you
Voice,
said?
yes, it's like The Voice. I hope your audience knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, they do. Trust me.
I mean, I've watched The Voice, and this is what happened for artists, that they were not hired because of the way they looked. Well, we're going through the same thing, and that's part of the hiring process in tech, that when you read the name unconsciously, you're given a higher number to the male with the exact same qualifications than when you read a resume with a woman's name attached to it. And let me tell you, it's not only the name. It's sometimes you need to remove the year you graduated from college, because they use that against you. It's actually a bigger problem than most people think.
Oh, gosh. No, I know. I saw it. I mean, there were women that I was working with at Facebook that were women of color, and they were seriously asking themselves when we'd have lunch, like, God, I hope I didn't regret leaving my old job for just this contract position, because I want to work here so bad. And, I'm like, wow,
those are tough decisions when you need money.
Well, no, but they were being paid the same or less than if they went to another company, maybe that was more boring, I guess.
Right.
Because, when you're in Facebook, you're dialed in.
Yeah. It's the
on
name.
a lot of, and it's the name, but you're through a contractor. But I digress. And it is not about Facebook right now. And I did, by the way, see that movie social dilemma. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't.
Yeah. But that's why we're here. That's why we're here, so that we can bring about change, because I think a lot of people know what the issues are and everybody's waiting for someone else to fix it.
Oh, totally. They are. And we can't do that. I mean, that's why, again, my opinion, why we're here, why we're in this moment. And we have to just get out there and do it. We can't change what we want. I think I just posted this yesterday. We can't have what we want if we can't change who we are. So we have to change some things about us to get to where we want to be. And that means getting off the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that in a figurative way. I don't mean that in a mean way. I just say do something. And the more we do stuff, the more things move, because it goes up and down and it's really hard. But I want to get back to you in this position. You have a very big leadership role in an educational institution, which is really awesome. And those are the two big things that I'm very passionate about, because technology and education really go hand in hand. And we touched upon it a little bit earlier about the disparity in education, which brings me to your journey of why you came to the United States when you were 16 years old. And you and I have chatted before, but I didn't really get the story as to why your mom or your family wanted to leave the Dominican Republic. So please tell us, because I'm very curious and interested.
Yes, and thank you for asking. So I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. My dad passed away when I was 7, and I am the middle child. It's 3 of us. And so you can imagine my mom stayed alone trying to support 3 kids on her own. And it actually came to a point where she had to make a decision. And she understood when I finished high school that the best decision was for her to move to the US so that we can have a better future. I don't want to talk about politics, but it's very difficult in my country to succeed unless you know the right people. And I'm sure it's not only my country, it's in many places.
What? Is that not the same here? Wait a minute.
It's probably everywhere. So I came to the US when I finished high school. I did not speak a word of English, but I went straight into college. I went into a community college, and I was extremely lucky that a lot of the students were also Latinos. So I started with a lot of ESL courses, and luckily I love languages. And so I started to pick up English really quickly. And during my first years there, I worked at the computer lab as a technician, helping other students. And that's where my love for technology and computers actually started.
Wow. So just to go back, your mom became a single mom raising 3 kids in the Dominican Republic. That is intense, I'm sure, because just the economics of being a single mom with probably not a lot of opportunities, it really impacted probably the way you saw a lot of what you wanted in your future. Because my mother was a single mother, right, with 3 kids, and she didn't have any skills. She barely had a junior college education, a little bit, not very much. So she was held to administrative roles. So the economic platform for a lot of women is you have to marry to get that stability, especially if you don't have education. Yes. Or, you really have to become super desperate. And, I just hate to think of the other way. But
yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. I never shared this before, but in my country, during that time, the men usually worked and the women were usually home, taking care of the house and the children. And so I'm glad you mentioned this, because this connects to how did you make it into being a CIO? I watched my mom struggle. I watched my mom suffer. I saw everything that she had to go through so that she can support us. And she would do anything to keep us in private school before we left the Dominican Republic. And so when you ask me, well, how did you make it into CIO? I made it my mission to make sure that all the sacrifices that my mom went through were not in vain. I
Right.
did my mission that I would never depend on someone else for my financial stability because of
Yep.
what I saw her going through. And I think that's part of the drive that I have in me that always pushes me to be better and to do more for her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm the oldest in my family. It was the
Mhm.
same thing. And I said the same thing. I saw the suffering. I saw so much that it really was, I'm out of here. And, to be honest, I really didn't want to have children early on because I felt that I needed to have a financial stability first. And this is a personal choice. A lot of women can, they want children, and I think they should. But for me, going through that, and I'm sure as you saw with your mom, it was just too hard.
It's a tough decision, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a personal decision also.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, I never saw myself married or with kids, which all my friends would dream about that from the time they were 7. And,
Right.
and so
What is that?
I think that was the first hint for me that maybe you're not so straight after all. But that's another reason I think why I've been able to do so much is because I don't have children. I can imagine how difficult it is for moms to do the work that I do. I was able to stay late if I needed to. I was able to go to a get together after work if I needed to. And that's one of the roadblocks that I know women face today because they're caregivers and they need to go home after work and they need to care for their children or a parent. And so that keeps them out of the game because a lot of the conversations that are meaningful happen during a lunch break outside or when you're having a drink after work, which is insane that this is how it happens. But that's the reality. And that's what we need to understand, that even though we think it's crazy, that's what's happening and we need to stop it. And before we stop it, you're either in it or you're out.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's what I've said in the past. And, a study just came out that Latinas have been the most impacted in the economic crisis. And that's because for various reasons that we are, like you said, the caregivers. And when our communities have been impacted by COVID and we are the caretakers in the family, or we're scared for our kids and we have to homeschool them, and we, the husband or the partner or just the mom can't make it on her own, there's a huge disparity that people don't understand. So how do we get back in the game, level up if you can, is you got to partner up with people in the community to support each other.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of people trying to create apps within the community that want to share childcare if they can. And I don't know how that's being done with COVID. Like everybody has to be tested, or you create your own bubbles where you can in your neighborhood or whatever. But it just is so hard. And I really put my heart out there for women who were probably in the middle of getting their higher education, or they're trying to level up their skill set so they can get a better job, right? Or the husband too, or a partner.
Right? Exactly. And let me tell you, when I went for my master's degree, we actually made an agreement here in the house. For the next 2 years, I'm going for my master's. You need to help me because I won't be able to do this much work. And then when I finished, my wife went for her master's and I was helping in the house with the cleaning and everything else. And so if you don't have that partnership at home and it's all on you, I can only imagine how difficult this is and why you would just resign from your job and just stay home.
Right. And there's a lot that we can do. And that's why that's why I do this podcast, so that we hear you, we see you. There's resources out there. The Central Valley is really impacted out here in California. And I did a podcast with Bitwise, and they've partnered with the government to create an online service called onward.ca that you can log on to for food services, job resources. And this was done by a Latina. Her name is Irma Olguin, and she's the CEO of Bitwise. And I had a conversation with their VP a few episodes ago. So this is what I mean. It's like we got to come together as community. And tech is a big part of it because we're on tech all the time. You can't tell me you aren't scrolling through Instagram, you're on your Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is, doing selfies. And do you know how much you're impacting that technology? You are literally influencing the product development there. And that's why we need you on the inside. Those of you listening, I'm not kidding. And mostly in tech healthcare. So that one brings me to you, Elaine, about why you got interested in tech. I mean, you said you saw your mom being challenged and you wanted to get a good job and go to school.
Yeah.
But why tech? Why did you see tech as that?
Yes.
Driver.
So three parts. The first one is when I started working in the computer lab, and I'm a people person. So helping others drives me, and I love doing that. So that was one reason. The second one is my brother, the oldest, he's into tech and gaming. And so watching him got me really curious about what's possible. And then the third reason is that, I don't know if you remember, they give you these assessments at the end of your college where they try to tell you which jobs you can go for.
Oh, I think it's the stupidest thing.
Right. And
I just want to do this. And then they'll even tell you, like when you go to your professors, oh, well, I don't know if that's really a good fit for you. It's like, who the F are you?
Exactly. So I did that stupid thing that you call. And two came up for me. One was psychology and the other one was technology. And, believe it or not, it was accurate because I did love both. I love people, so I love psychology. And when I met with my advisor, I asked, well, how long would each one take? And knowing that I needed to help my mom and I needed to help in the household, I said, this is a no-brainer. I need to make money faster. I cannot have 4 years here and 2 years there and then open my own, facility so that I can then take clients. And that's one of the reasons I went for technology. I love technology. I'm curious about knowledge. I love learning new things. And there's nothing that changes faster than technology. And I needed to make money. So I went to a technical college to get a degree and get a job. And then I went back to get my bachelor's and my master's after I was already working. And let me tell you, my whole life I've worked and gone to college at the same time, which I know is possible for everyone. And those are the things that a lot of people don't know or don't understand, that we don't have that privilege of, well, let me do one first and then the other. No, I need to work and then I need to study at night and during the weekends. And we do that throughout and still today, because I love learning. So I'm always taking classes online and that's what helped me move forward.
Yeah, no, that's spot on about what I did pretty much as well. I had to work during the day, go to school at night. And the other day I was asking my husband, I'm like, I don't know when I slept, really. I think I slept like 5 hours a day. I don't know, because
people used to ask me that question before.
It's like, when did I sleep? And I said, it must have been on the weekends or something. I don't know. I can't. I'm like, it was all a blur back then, but I just got it done. And I've done a lot. I moved up here to the Bay Area because I was really into music and creativity, but I was also wanting that knowledge from, I don't know. I just wanted to get out of, where I was. And it was a good thing. And that's part of probably your journey, right?
Yeah, but you know what happens? I realized that when you love something, when you're passionate about something, it doesn't feel like work and you don't feel tired. So right now I have my full-time job as a CIO and I have 5X Minority. And I can tell you the work I do for 5X Minority, it never feels like work. And I'm always more energized when I finish than before I started.
Oh, no, I know what you mean. I think I've said this to you before. We're building that bridge to give back because we know what it is. I always say, I make a funny reference that, I'm a Chicanosaurus because I've seen my mom and my grandma, and here I am, and the ageism in the big tech, the FANGs, I call them the FANGs, right? Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, all that. But I just want to say that you out there are the new workforce that is going to influence so much. You're already doing it now, and how you do it is really leveling up your tech skills. And it's not learning, all the cool features in your iPhone, which is really cool, or TikTok. But if you could just learn all of that in coding, or how product design is done, or how you can manage more phones through an IT system, like so many things that you can do beyond that, because that already shows how smart you are. If you're interested in knowing how the features of an application work, I mean, you're really primed to be somewhere on the other side, because you probably go through it and say, oh, this is the stupidest feature, or why didn't they do this, or why can't they do that? And they probably can if you were on the other side, because that is the problem. You're not on the other side.
Yeah. And I always tell people, make sure you keep your options open. Don't go in one lane and stay there. And that's why being curious is so impactful, because you don't become a CIO if you only like networking, or if you only like programming. You have to know it all, because you're overseeing the entire department. So be curious about it. I wanted to learn WordPress. I went online and I learned WordPress. I wanted to learn, I love project management. I became PMP certified. These are some of the little things that would help you make that jump into the next level and the next level. You have to be curious, and you gotta want to learn something different every year.
Yeah, it keeps you going. Yeah. I know people's faces are stuck to their phones and looking at stuff, and they do want to learn. It's just, I would say take it to the next level, because you can. There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, and it requires a lot of discipline. So if you don't know how to put an hour away every day to do that one thing you want to do, then it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, or even 30 minutes if you can. Just give yourself 30 minutes. What is Brene Brown says, make your personal fort. Give yourself that personal, like, this is my time, my space. I need to think, nobody come around me. Go lock yourself in the bathroom for a while, or whatever you need to do to have your own space to just think.
That's what I do when I'm writing an article. Nobody talk to me for the next hour. I'm busy. I'm doing research here, people.
Oh my God, that's so funny. So I want to talk about real quick the ERGs and diversity mentorships that try to exist in these companies, because I have seen them, I have been a part of them, and I have a lot of opinions about them. But I'd love to hear yours first.
You mentioned 3 huge topics all at the same time.
Oh, dang.
But let me start with ERGs, because I've been thinking and talking about them more recently. And the first thing I want to say is that there is a ton of value in having ERG groups. And if you don't know what ERG means, it's employee resource groups. And originally they were created to ensure that people with a common background can get together and we can share information, and there is a path for growth, and maybe to go into management, which I think it's amazing. A lot of them are led by volunteers, and a lot of volunteers don't get paid for the time that they spend doing this work. A lot of the volunteers don't get administrative support. A lot of volunteers don't have a budget assigned to ERG groups. And so I think that's one of the issues that I have personally with ERG groups. I think they're great if we take care of them. I don't like it when companies try to use ERG groups as the solution to all their problems, as the evidence that we are diverse.
Window dressing. I call it window dressing.
Exactly. And I see that happening at times. And so let me tell you, I don't have ERG groups. I see everyone in my team as a human being. I don't need to separate them or put them into boxes, which is what society has tried to do with me since I was born. And I have many boxes there. So my opinion in general is that if you start seeing people as people, you wouldn't worry so much about all these issues that we have today.
Google, I'll just bring up Google because I was there. Okay. And they had a big Latino ERG group, right? Employee resource group. And anybody could join that work there. Well, I was a contract worker, but there are a lot of employees that are there. But these folks that are there in that group come from all over the world. But they've had private educations. They have had private schools and private colleges that are hired and that are in that group. And when you're trying to, compare apples to apples, it's really not the same when you're talking with them and you're trying to share an experience. And there's different Latino groups. There's a lot of baggage that comes in, right? Where everybody starts to be cliquish in the group. There's only certain things that they can do, or they don't want to share information. This was at Google, mind you. This was at Google. It was a trip there. And I found it very hard to say, how is this group really supporting all of us when here you have contractors who are trying to network and to be supported and to be seen, but we're not really supported and seen. And why is that? Well, you could see the disparity because a lot of contract workers had state college degrees, right? And they weren't from, these private institutions or very top 10 Ivy League schools.
Right. And that's, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the biggest issues that I see right now for women going into STEM. A lot of these technical recruiters go to Ivy League school. That's where they get their employees from. They need to go to community colleges. They need to go to public schools. There is a lot of talent there. And what happens now, related to what you just mentioned, is that a lot of companies want to just have a check mark, and they just want to be able to say, well, I hire a Latina, so I'm done. Or I hire a Black person and I'm done. And that is when the work really starts. Hiring someone is just the beginning. Once they're hired, you want to make sure that they feel that they belong.
Yes.
You want to make sure that they feel that they have a voice and that their voice matters. You want to make sure that you pair them the first few weeks with a senior person so that they can learn about the culture, so that they can learn about the work they need to do. And what I see happening is that we hire people and then we forget about them. And then we expect them to figure all of these things on their own. And no wonder the yearly review comes. And I mean, this better not be the first time that you tell me something is not working. So that's a lot to follow up on there. But the recruiting part, it's only the beginning. We cannot forget about that. And it cannot come from ERG groups. These messages need to come from the top of the company. They need to come from the CEO. They need to come from the CIO. They need to come from everyone, but especially the top.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack, I know. And it, like you said, I just call it window dressing, because when I see the numbers that are in those groups, if everyone was hired in that group, there'd be more representation at that company. But because they are not all hired employees and half of them are contract workers, the numbers are low. So it's very, it blew my mind. So this is why I want to get more women of color and in the C-suite, or that have been in these companies that are building the bridge, want to be mentors, give us the advice that we need to navigate that space, or to just give us the real deal of what's really happening there, so that they can either interconnect the disparities and make it better when you get in there and talk it out, or you build your own goddamn company. That's what I'm saying. Just
make your own table and walk around with it.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, right now, if I could put what I know now back into my 20-year-old body, it's like, forget it. I try not to go there about my math skills and all that stuff. I'm like, God, I probably would have been working for NASA by now. I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because for us Latinos, that is something that is part of our culture sometimes, where we are told that there is a limit to what we can do. And I don't think it's our parents' fault or their parents' fault. There's a lot of conditioned thinking that is transferred from generation to generation. And one of the things that it took me a while to learn when I moved to the US was that the possibilities were endless.
Yeah.
And there was so much more that I can do than what my mom would tell me, for example. When I started my master's degree, my mom called me and said, "Oh my God, Mija, aren't you tired? You sure you?" And
Right.
God bless her. This is just her caring for me and my well-being, which I totally understand. But I had to say, Ma, people look at the credentials and I need to have them if I want to continue to grow. And she understood that.
Right.
But a lot of other families are going through that. And sometimes the fight is at home. It's not always outside.
That is truth right there. But the one thing I want to say, Elaine, is why technology is so important is because you and I both know it is a wealth gap, that we can close with technology.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that really gets me about contract workers versus people being hired and money and this and that, because it really does close that gap. And you and I have been talking about that, about, you wanted to make money because you have these goals. I did as well. And that's part of, why we want to work in tech as well. Because there is so much money.
Yeah. And not only that, we don't have the privilege of being supported by our parents. We actually need to support our parents.
Yes. And I think about that. It's very hard because I know people that are doing it right now. And it's sad because, just where we are in this country where everybody doesn't have the same, right to healthcare. And one of the things I want to get to are the solutions. Like we talk about building the bridge to the younger generation. And I think we have and this is part of the podcast of intergenerational wisdom being shared, because it's so important for us to share what we've learned, to give back. So what do you think are some of the solutions?
Yes. So first, I want to talk about the family, because there's two parts of it. It's what happens at home, in my experience, and it's what happens when you get to work. So especially for women in STEM, we need to make sure that we don't tell our kids what toys they need to play with, what colors they need to like. I see that happening so often, where girls don't think that they can be programmers or that they can be, database experts because of what they're being told growing up. And even today, if you go to a big shopping center and you go to the girls section, everything is pink. Even the messages, that we put on the t-shirts, it's like flowers and unicorns for girls, and then for boys is be tough and go out there and do it. So I think that's part of the problem. We need to change that. And then in the workplace, there is a ton of issues. So I'll share a few with you. So in the workplace, the first thing that I would say is that unconscious bias training is needed. In my opinion, it should be mandatory, and it should be something that happens every year, not once and then forget about it. Because what I see is that people go to this training and then it never happens again, and you tend to forget and go back into old habits. The second issue is the hiring process. I mentioned earlier that we should have blind auditions. If possible, let's remove the names from the resumes and focus on the actual skills that the person has. But even more importantly, I don't know if you've noticed job descriptions recently, they could be 2 or 3 pages long. Ugh. So what we are doing is we're creating a wish list, and we are sending that off to the internet. And here's what happens. When women look at a job description, unless they have 100% of the qualifications, they would not apply. Men would apply even if they have only 60% of the qualifications. So you automatically keeping women out. The next part is the interview process.
Totally.
We need to ensure that every candidate is asked the exact same questions. Because of unconscious bias, we tend to be comfortable with people that look like us and speak like us. And then we deviate from the questioning because now we get along. And that's unfair towards the rest of the candidates that came by before you. And then once they are hired, don't forget about them. They need to be paired with a senior person, and we need to ensure that we create a safe space, talking about psychological safety, We need to make sure we create a safe space for them to be themselves, for them to make mistakes. I don't want to be one Elaine when I'm home and another Elaine when I get to work. I'm the same person everywhere I go. You can find any video of me online. I'm speaking to you the same way that I would speak to anyone else in my team. And that's difficult because we want to fit in and we want to be liked. So part of it is an internal process. But the last piece I want to mention, and the one that I believe helped me the most, is having mentors in the workplace that can help. I was so lucky to have a mentor that guided me for the past 10 years. And my mentor would listen to me, would guide me, and would see things in me that I did not see myself. And so it's hard because it's not always easy to find a mentor that you can work with. But if possible, if we can create mentorship programs, then that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think that's some good advice. I also think that, going back to the ERGs, and that's a great place to really bring in leadership into those groups, to be invited. But also, ERGs were created as well to give that safe psychological space. But it becomes very dynamic when you're hiring people that are on the outside, that you're supposed to fit into that mold. Some people are cool. I'm not saying everybody's mean or whatever. But I think leadership needs to be brought into those circles to experience those cultures, to sit down and have lunch with them, to listen to their conversations, and to see. It's weird because it's supposed to be a group for them to be safe, but leadership needs to come in. So how real would you be if, the VP of HR came and sat down with you? You'd be like, no way. Or product development.
Yeah,
or
that is a challenge. That is a challenge because we automatically tend to change the way we act when someone with so much power is around us. And I think one of the advantages that I had is that I started as a help desk technician, and I move up through the ranks with the same staff that I have today. So people that used to work with me now report to me, and it helps them be more comfortable around me. But I could imagine that being very difficult for someone who just came from the outside and there's 5 levels above you. I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's still something to undo. So the boardrooms that you're in, and then also, everybody says they have an open door policy in their organization, like come and sit down and have a chat. I think that's always good. I think that's always good to talk to somebody that is higher up with you, or to be partnered with as a mentor, or to try to get some guidance, as you say. Everybody should be doing that. I always think that's a good idea.
Yes. My door is always open and they know it. And if they don't come see me, I go see them.
Oh, that's nice.
You have to.
But I think that's a cultural thing, in my mind. I really do. I think that's a cultural thing. We're held to so much accountability of everything, from our facial expressions to how we look, to the way we maneuver in the boardroom, or how we, even as we're hired, the way we communicate to the first person we talk to. Everything is so scrutinized with us. And I'm talking,
it's exhausting.
It's exhausting, but just as a woman, right? Just trying to get in that door. So, and I'm putting, just all of us together in this. And I really thought that your poem, I did read it, that I'd like you to share in closing, because it really does say a lot about how we all feel, in my mind. And we're just not saying it.
Yes, thank you so much. And I want to take a moment to pause and thank you for having me here today. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks.
So I love writing free-form poetry, and this was the last poem that I wrote, and the title is How Dare You Get Angry? And this poem came to me at a time where I could understand the disadvantages for women of color if we were to demonstrate how we really feel. And so I will just read it to you.
Yes, please do.
Excellent, thank you. On female rage. Rage is our defense against injustice, against white supremacy and patriarchy. Welcome to hell. When did it start? You are too fat, too loud, too angry. Smile more and be a nice girl, we are told. Can women ever get angry? When is it acceptable? Get livid, furious, outraged, choleric. Stop using passionate when angry. Fierce women in STEM disrupting the boys' club, mansplaining and whitesplaining. Let us keep fighting. There is much to be angry about. Embrace your messiness and fight like a girl. Show your strength. Change is inevitable.
Oh, I'm going to cry
Thank
right now.
you.
It's so good.
Thank you.
It was so good. I mean, it's true.
Oh.
It's true. I mean, if I was, Kamala Harris last night, I just would have, just broke down that plexiglass. But you know what? The fly stole the show, so I don't even care. Because that fly just said it all for her. And I know she's dying right now, just saying, I stole the show, and that was my co-pilot there with me.
Yes, regardless, I would say that regardless of your political views, I would say that it was a huge moment for women last night, because it demonstrated what we go through every day of our lives. It demonstrated how difficult it is for our voices to be heard. And it demonstrated what's possible when you are assertive and you don't give in. And so that was really good to watch.
And your poem is perfect for that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you liked it.
Yeah, Elaine. So how can people find you?
Yes. So you can go to 5xminority.com. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter with the handle 5xminority, and the same for LinkedIn.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yep. So I'm definitely going to let people know about this bridge that, a lot of us older Chicanas and women of color that are building for the younger generation, that we want you to succeed. That's our mission. That's my mission. I know it's your mission too. So
definitely, especially knowing all of the people that helped me be where I am, it is time now to give that back to others.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Elaine. I really appreciate you, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Elaine, for joining me today on Latinas from the Block to the Boardroom. Again, we can find all her information and content at 5xminority.com, where her TEDx talk, The Value of Mentoring Women and Minorities in Tech, is on her website, and you can follow her on her social media handles on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Again, I want to thank our community out there, our global community, for following us at latinasb2b.com, but also latinasb2b.marketing for all your business resources and podcasting marketing services. We look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for subscribing to Latinas from the Block to the Boardroom. Gracias.